And we are live. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to A Bookish Moment. I'm Sarah Burr.
I'm J.C. Kenney, and folks, it's too cold to be outside right now, so I think the best thing is to hang out with us for the next half hour or so while we get bookish, Sarah. So let's get to it.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree. And hopefully, by the end of our episode, we will have some more books for you guys to add to your reading lists as you
Yes.
cozy up inside and stay warm. I don't know about you, but our weather here, we've got tons of snow. It's super, super cold. And I just don't know if there's like any end in sight of winter at this point. But
Yeah,
we have books and we have a wonderful guest with us today.
we do.
And I think that this has got to be one of the most unique paranormal setups that I have come across in the mystery genre. We are in for a treat today. Lynda Allen, a welcome to A
Whoop,
Bookish
whoop.
Moment.
Thank you very much. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks
We
for the
are
opportunity.
we are thrilled to have you on the show. And as folks settle in, if you wouldn't mind kind of bringing us a little bit on your life journey, tell us, what got you interested in writing and what kind of made you want to write a mystery.
Well, my writing journey is a little unusual.
Mhm.
I didn't grow up wanting to be a writer, though there was one time in fifth grade in Mr. Ainsworth's class where we had to do a writing assignment. And I distinctly remember writing this story about these men hiding in a cave. I don't remember what the story was about, but I had this moment of, oh my gosh, I love that I get to put words in their mouths. It was so cool getting to make them speak. And to this day, I still love to write dialogue. It's one of my
Mhm.
favorite things. But after that, I never had any idea of being a writer again until about 2003. I had been doing some screenwriting for courses that I took for my master's degree. And I apologize, my voice is a little scratchy from a cold I had a week ago. Um, and so I had been doing some of that writing, but I didn't consider myself a writer. And then overnight, I started writing poetry. I went through this, what I call a spiritual discernment process with a friend because I was kind of stuck in my life. And the process started with the question, what is yours to do to be happy? And so I had to answer that question. And the answer to the question was right. And I had no idea what that meant because I was not a writer. And so the key to it was just willingness. And I said, well, I'm willing to find out what that means. And the next morning I started writing poetry and I haven't stopped writing since. And then eventually, I took what I was working on as a screenplay at the time and turned it into a novel because I submitted it as part of the Project Greenlight contest. I think it was the second year, and it made it the first cut to the top 250 screenplays. And some of the feedback was, this might make a better novel than a movie. I was like, oh, I can do that. That's easy. It wasn't easy to turn a screenplay into a novel, but I did. And that really, I think, was the start of enjoying telling longer form stories, not poetry. Though I still write poetry. I'm gonna take a drink real quick.
Mhm.
So while you take a drink, I love that story, and for so many different reasons. But one of the things I'd like to ask you, kind of right off the bat, we have been fortunate enough to have a few other folks who have had journeys similar to yours, in that they have gotten into writing screenplays, and then adapted those screenplays to novels. Could you talk about a little bit about what your process was, and from going to screenplay to novel, and if there are any things that kind of lessons learned, what you think, how you've benefited as a writer from spending that time working on screenplays?
I think that it was a real challenge for me because having never written a novel before, I went into it very naively thinking, well, I mean, it's still the same story, right? But it's such a different format in the way you tell the story. Writing it as a screenplay is so visual, and you write everything visually, and you imagine everything visually. And there's a lot less scene building in terms of the setting. There's some scene directions at the beginning of each scene, but that's about it. But in the book, um, especially with my cozies, I really like the setting to be part of the story. And so that was a real big transition from the screenplay to the novel, was learning how to create the scene differently and visually for the reader because they're not watching it happen, right? They have to imagine it for themselves. So you have to give them more to go on to build that scene for themselves. So I think that was the biggest learning for me, was how to set the scene for people.
I love what you said about the how much you enjoyed the dialogue and putting words into people's mouths. I often feel that I could probably write an entire book just based on dialogue, and because for me, the relationships of my characters are, I feel like, the things that are moving the story forward. But you're right, in cozy mysteries especially, that setting is such an important part of it's a character of itself. And, being able to weave that in so that your reader really falls in love not only with the people, but with the places that they're visiting. So I would love to kind of hear more about your process of bringing the world that your protagonist, Olivia Wilde, in the Live Wild mysteries, how like you bring her world to life. But before we do that, I do want to say hello to all of our wonderful folks that are popping into the chat and joining us on this chilly afternoon. We have Susan in Bedford, Ohio, who is under a snow squall warning. So, Susan, be
Yeesh.
careful. We've got
Definitely stay
Farmhouse
inside.
Reader saying hello with probably the most cold emoji that I've ever seen in my life. That's a really good emoji. We have DHB saying happy Tuesday. We have David saying hi from Hampton, New Hampshire. And we have Regina, the Southernista, saying good afternoon, everyone. So thank you guys for being here with us. If you have questions for Lynda as we move along, please let us know. And before, I just want to give a quick shout out to our very own J.C. Kenney, who is also celebrating a book release this week. Buried in the Sand, his book 4 in the Elmo Simpson Mysteries came out yesterday. So folks, you want to make sure that you pick this one up because the world is a better place when there is more Elmo in it. So
And
want to make
it's
sure.
sand and it's warm and
Yes.
enough of me.
It'll be a nice vacation. So, Lynda,
Yes.
let's talk about Liv. How on earth did you come up with the idea that you wanted to, number one, write a cozy mystery with a paranormal element where the paranormal element is rooted in menopause?
Yeah, it's a little, it's so much fun actually for me. I love the idea. So I think it actually all began years and years ago with just one little sign that I happened to come across. I was at a chiropractor's office and there was a sign on the wall, and this was well before I was in perimenopause, that said, they're not hot flashes, they're power surges. And that really stuck with me, just the idea of you could look at them differently, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when I started going through them, I forgot all about that and forgot to look at them differently and just was really annoyed by the hot flashes that I had every single day for more than 10 years, multiple times a day. And it was so frustrating and so life changing. And the mood swings were really terrible for me. I didn't recognize myself. Gigi, who was in the book, came from my own life. So I nicknamed eventually, I nicknamed my moody personality Grumpy Gal because I was so tired of her and I needed something to call her. And actually giving her a name helped me a lot because it brought humor to it. It gave me a way to call it out when it was happening so I could notice it and be aware of it. It gave me a way to warn my husband because I would tell him I'm having a Gigi kind of day and he would give me the space I needed that day. So it was really helpful. And I give out Gigi stickers at my events too, because I think everyone should be able to have a Gigi kind of day whenever they're having it and let people know. So she made it into the books too. And so I was really grappling with the effects of perimenopause and nobody talking to me about it, not knowing what was coming, not knowing what was happening, not recognizing for what it was for quite a while, and being really frustrated. And then I decided to start writing a mystery because I love writing, I love reading mysteries, and I have since I was a kid. And so I put the two together, and really the first thing that came to me was the title, Flashes of Insight. I was like, what if you had visions during, like, what if you could make them useful?
Mm-hmm.
And you had visions during your hot flashes, these psychic visions that could help you solve mysteries. And the title was the first thing that came, and it made me laugh. And so I stuck with it. And I just loved being able to transform the frustration that I had personally into something that was useful and give it to a character and, turn it into her superpower. Why not? Like I use my Wonder Woman mug because I love, the idea of these superpowers that we have inside of us that we don't know about necessarily and that are awakened by something. And hers are awakened by hot flashes. And so she really struggles at first to understand what is happening and why it's happening, and how to use them. But then, she uses them to help solve mysteries in the end.
I mean, that's the fact that you approached it, or you had mentioned that humor, that it made you laugh, having this grumpy girl personality, and having like the ability to take a situation that is frustrating, or scary, or just like there's so much up in the air that you don't know because there's so much that we're not told. I just find it to be something that not only do you present it in an entertaining way, but it's also very relatable. And I think that that's one of the core values of a cozy mystery, that even though we have this paranormal element in the mix, you're still finding a way to root it in something that's very relatable, at least to women. So
Well, I don't know. I think it helps men too in the end.
well, yeah, because it's
Help
a
them
learning
understand.
tool, and like a way to
Exactly.
understand of like, oh, like this is what my partner is going through, or this is what my sister is going, like what have you.
Yes.
I think that
No, that was
it's
part
such
of
like
it for me.
a grounding feature. And I just want to quickly shout out. We have a comment from Regina, saying hot flashes are the worst except in the winter, especially the night sweats. So
Yeah.
again, not alone in how this all plays out. And
But
I
that's part of why I wrote it that way, because
mhm.
I felt alone. Nobody would talk to me about it. And not even my doctor really would talk to me about it that much. I tried to get my friends together to talk about it. And I started this group, and two people showed up, and we met once, and that was it. And no one ever wanted to talk about it again. And so I felt very alone. And part of the impetus for the stories, for including menopause in the stories, was to spark conversations among women themselves too. I hope that in book clubs, people will start talking about it, because no one would talk to me about it. And I really wanted to have those conversations happen in the stories
Mhm.
as, not as a model, but as a way for people to begin to talk about it amongst themselves if they're having trouble with that.
Like a noble cause,
I
if
don't know
I've
about
ever heard.
noble,
Yeah.
but it mostly grew out of anger because there was so little information when I started going through it.
Yeah,
Well,
well, I
and I
mean,
think that's one of the things that's really interesting and refreshing from a reader perspective, is that we are fortunate that within the last few years, we are seeing a lot of folks like yourself writing stories, whether it's in book form, putting it on television, in movies, because the postmenopausal women have for so long been an unseen group.
Yes.
And it's like it's good to see that y'all are being seen again. I know my wife, she's got a button from back when she went through her menopause phase that said, "I'm still hot, it just comes in flashes." So that was, again, the
Excellent.
humorous way that she would deal with it.
Yes. Well, and I honestly, I put up with them for 10 years, and I had bought into the storyline that had been put out there by the medical profession, that hormone replacement was really, really dangerous for you. Um, and hadn't done any of the research myself. And so I just went along with it. And it took me 10 years before I talked to my doctor about it and found out that it really was okay for me to try it. And I know everybody should consult their doctors and have honest conversations about whether it's right for you and what the risks are. But for me, almost instantly, as soon as I started the process, the hot flashes stopped. And I was so mad that I had waited so long to try it. But yeah, I mean, there's benefits to it and there's drawbacks to it, so you have to weigh them out. Um, but just even being able to have those conversations is important. But the humor part of it was really important to me, because humor is a coping mechanism in my life, and it always has been. It was something I learned from my family growing up. And so being able to call her out and give her a name and have fun conversations through the characters in the book about the things that happen to your body, and the hot flashes and how to deal with it, and the grumpiness and all of that really was helpful and fun. It was really fun to write those conversations, especially the dinner party, which they have a monthly dinner party they call their monthly. And so at the monthly in Flashes of a Dying Hour, I had such fun writing that scene. The dialogue in that was just a joy to write, and I just laughed my way through it as I wrote it.
well, the really what I think is the fun thing that you've incorporated into this is that we have Liv having these visions when she has her hot flashes, and these visions can kind of either help or guide her when it comes to solving these mysteries in her town. And I am as someone who writes a paranormal cozy that also has a character who, if you saw the right thing, you'd solve the case in like 2 seconds.
Yeah.
But you have to, as the writer, create this magic element in a way that is powerful, but not too powerful or too like OP. And so I'm wondering how you went about that, Lynda, in kind of crafting the rules of like the magic element that you have woven in here. Did you find that challenging, or was it something that really just kind of it was effortless to write and to incorporate into Liv's story?
I did find it challenging, finding ways to include the visions that felt natural and not forced, like not too convenient that it happened
Mm-hmm.
right when it did, that kind of thing. But I also found it to be a lot of fun. And I enjoyed incorporating a sort of spiritual neighbor that she could bounce ideas off of. And it really helped to have her powers have started later in life so that she's just learning to understand them. She doesn't really know what's happening in the first book. And so the reader is getting to know about her paranormal abilities along with her. And so it's not easy for her to figure out what's going on. She thinks she's going crazy. Why is she seeing these things? And then they
Mm-hmm.
happen the next day. It's really weird. And there's no family history that she knows of about it and stuff like that. So, she has no basis, she has no reference for it. And
Mm-hmm.
having her friend who lives next door, who has a spiritual background that she grew up with, that can be her guide in this process and she can bounce ideas off of and things like that was really a helpful character to have in the book so that I could help Liv find her way through this in a
Mm-hmm.
more natural way.
So cool. So we got a question from our viewers. DHB asks, when making the yeah, I'm a writer, not a reader, evidently. When making the transition from screenplay to novel, how did you or do you organize the scenes? Do you use a storyboard, an outline, or at this point, do you just wing it?
I winged it. I literally took my screenplay and just started copying things over into a different document and adding what needed to be added, things like that. So yeah, I didn't have an outline. I actually found it kind of fun to be able to flesh it out more by making it into a novel. So that part was really kind of fun for me. It was a really interesting story. And what's funny about it for me is that there was a paranormal element to that story too, but I hadn't really thought about that. And someone who knew that story and then read my Live Wild series said, "So do you always write about paranormal?" I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" Like, "Well, that other book you wrote had paranormal element." I was like, "Oh my gosh, you're right. I hadn't even thought about that." So I guess it's something that I just have been interested in for a long time and makes its way into my stories. Because I guess stories that I like are ones that um, the hero finds something within themselves that really helps them to solve whatever problem they're facing. And they find that inner strength, they find that inner hidden talent that they didn't know they had. And I just find those kinds of stories really intriguing and really fun to read. So they're also fun to write.
That's I often wonder in the like the screenplay to book world if there is a like definitive, it's easier to have a book and turn it into a screenplay, or have a screenplay and turn it into a book, because as JC mentioned, we've had a few people on the show that have gone from screenplay to book, but I don't know if we've had somebody, JC, that's done the opposite. Because I imagine fleshing
No.
it out
Yeah.
would be so much more freeing and allowing you to explore, you know, deeper your characters deeper. Because and I don't know anything about screenplay writing, but it seems like a lot of the character is maybe left to the actor to really bring to life and to flesh out and to find those motivations. Whereas in a book, you are the one providing that to your audience. So I've always been curious about that transition, or just like the whole process in general. But one thing that I want to make sure that we get to,
Sorry.
Lynda, as our time together is quickly running out, is
Oh no.
we have a paranormal element that that Liv encounters in her mysteries, but you also have a historical element. And I love a good history in my mystery. In book
Good.
one, we have her like doing some work with these lost presidential letters. In book two, we are dealing with Edgar Allan Poe. Tell us a little bit about how you decided to weave history or historical context and events into your world. Was that something that you knew right from the start, or was that something that kind of naturally occurred as you were exploring?
For book one, I knew right from the start. I worked at the James Monroe Museum here in Fredericksburg for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I learned when I worked there was that when Elizabeth Monroe passed away, James Monroe burned all of their personal correspondence, which was fairly normal at the time. But of course, we all wished that someone would find a secret cache of letters as the staff at the museum because we wanted to know more about their personal life, but also their daily life. So we wished that someone would find it like, Antiques Roadshow style behind a painting or something.
Mm-hmm.
It was wish fulfillment. I made it come true in the book that somebody found a secret cache of letters, and so there's this thief that's trying to steal them. And so I got to write about the museum too, which was really fun. But I've always been interested in history, part of why I worked at the museum. And so the second book does have an Edgar Allan Poe theme, which was really fun learning more about him. But that was inspired from something I had heard a long time ago about a copy of Tamerlane and Other Poems, which was his first poetry collection that was stolen from the University of Virginia Library back in the 70s and never recovered. And there were only maybe 50 copies printed, and they're really valuable. One sold a few years ago for $650,000. And so it
Wow.
seemed like, yeah, for this very short pamphlet of poetry that,
Mm-hmm.
it's not even that great a poetry really. But anyway, so it was really fun sort of exploring his life and incorporating that sort of Poe mania that I imagine people have into the story, and little elements of his story into the book too, especially around his death, because there's all that mystery around how he died. So I had a really good time with that. But that was just that little seed that was planted years ago when I heard that story about it being stolen from the library. So you
Mm-hmm.
never know what will come back later and be inspiration.
That's so
And
crazy.
speaking of inspiration, sorry, Sarah, go ahead.
No, no, I was just going to say that the publishing world is so wild because you think of Edgar Allan Poe as this like this figure that like, oh, like, everybody must have read his stuff, like all of it, like it must have been the world over because he is so famous now. But you just said there were like 50 copies of this poetry book that were released. And I'm just like, wow, like that really puts things into perspective. So that's all I
Yeah.
wanted to say. Go, Jim.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So, I was just going to say, speaking of inspiration, I love the way you also have kind of classified, the live story, the live wild stories as Jersey cozy. Because I almost feel like we need to kind of maybe give folks a little bit of a warning
We
about what you
do.
mean about Jersey girls, because we all kind of have an idea, but I'm going to leave it to you to kind of spill the beans here.
Okay, yes, I do. I call them Jersey Cozy Mysteries, even though they're set in Virginia. They're set in Fredericksburg, Virginia. But I and Liv both grew up in South Jersey. And so we're both Jersey girls. And there's a little bit of profanity in the books. So I like to call them Jersey Cozies just to warn people about the profanity, because I know cozy mystery readers are very particular about that. And I didn't want them to go into it with an expectation that it's a normal traditional cozy when it's a little cozy-ish when it comes to that. So I wanted to find a way to warn them, and Jersey Cozy seemed to fit really well with me and with Liv. But there was a reason that I decided to do that too, though, um, because I know cozies don't have profanity, right? So I decided to leave it in because the characters were really based on friends of mine, on my circle of friends. They got to choose their character names and the whole thing. So, they're loosely based on my friends, but I wanted them to be real women. We were going to talk about real stuff. And I didn't want them to have to pull punches. So I wanted people to recognize them as their friends that they hang out with. And so I gave them the opportunity to use the words they would normally use in conversation. But I did want to have a way to warn people at the same time.
I
Nice.
I think that is like such a unique way to be able to give that warning as well. Like, because I mean, and I don't know if it's just when I think of Jersey, I think of well, now I can't even think of it, but whatever
Using
that.
the Jersey Shore, right?
Yes,
The
yes, yes,
TV
yes,
show.
yes. So I was like, what was the name of that show? And so that like is very vividly like paints a picture for me of what, the language might
What to
be.
expect. Yes.
But
And
I
it's
also love that it
not
takes
a
place.
lot of it, but there's
Yeah.
some.
But I also love that, it does take place in Fredericksburg, Virginia. And so you're rooted in like a real place, but you've also kind of fictionalized it. So did you find any challenges with that in that because I have never done that before myself because I don't know how to do it and I'm always a little bit afraid. So what was it about that you wanted to make it a real location in your book?
Um, because I love Fredericksburg. I've lived here for 30 years, so I've lived here now longer than I lived when I grew up in Jersey, growing up in New Jersey. And I love it. I think it's a great city. It's changed a lot since I lived here, and it has so much to offer, including history. And I wanted it to be an element of the story so it would invite people to come to Fredericksburg. But it
Nice.
does have challenges when you use a real city. One of the biggest ones is I can't have anybody murdered in a real location in town, right? Because the owners of that establishment might not take a shine to that, right? So there are limitations to that. And I haven't had yet anybody tell me I got the streets wrong or anything like that. But I've had other authors tell me that that's one of the problems they've run into is that uh, readers who live in the town will tell you if you mess something up. So far, so good in terms of that. But that is a risk when you write about a real town.
Hmm.
And not real people that live in the town, though I reference a couple of real people occasionally, but they're not characters in the story. But there's a lot of character to this town. I'm going to be doing a driving tour with a couple of my friends from the museum sometime soon who have a long history here in Fredericksburg. And we're going to go through all these different neighborhoods and they're going to tell me all the stories about the people, the characters who lived in Fredericksburg so that I can work them into stories eventually. So I'm really
Oh,
looking forward to
wow.
that.
That is a
That'll
I've
be
also
wonderful
amazing.
idea.
also really enjoyed getting to know the history of the town through researching things for the book. For the second book, there's a little tiny island that I thought was nothing under one of the bridges in town because the Rappahannock River runs right through the city. And when I started to research it, I'm thinking of it in my head as this little tiny spit of land, but it's this island that they used to have events on. They had Fourth of July festivals and boxing matches and all these kinds of things. They even had like an amusement ride or two out there at some point in the early 1900s, which was a complete surprise to me. So it was been really fun trying to or finding out new things about the town that I didn't know.
Oh, well, that's even an added bonus. And so it sounds like readers
Yeah.
will be able to find out interesting and fun things about Fredericksburg, Virginia. When they pick up, we have Flashes of Insight is number one, and then Flashes of a Dying Hour is book two.
Hmm.
Any word on book three? Is there a book
I
three in the
am in
future?
revisions. I'm in revisions on it right now.
Nice.
Wonderful.
This one
Awesome.
has a baseball, witches, and superstition themes to it. So there's a
Ooh.
local minor league baseball team here, and I'm a huge baseball fan, and so is Liv. And so eventually I knew we had to have a baseball theme. So a baseball player from the local minor league team comes to her because she's starting to get known as a finder of lost things at this point, and asks her to help him get out of his slump and find his lost mojo. So I've
Aha.
been having a lot of fun with that. And with baseball superstition, because you know how superstitious sports athletes are. They can be very
Yes.
crazy about wearing the right socks or the shirt or eating the right food or whatever it is.
I'm thinking, JC, the episode of Psych when Sean has the yips.
Love Psych.
Mm.
Oh,
Oh
yes.
yeah.
Yes,
I
Yeah.
love Psych. Yes.
that
Oh
that's a,
yeah.
that's a good one.
Yeah.
Um, Lynda, this has been absolutely lovely. It's been wonderful getting to know you and your characters, to learn more about your process and the inspirations that you've had through your writing journey. If folks want to stay connected with you, what's the best way for them to either follow you, newsletter, all of that good stuff?
You can sign up for my newsletter at my website, which is lindaallenwrites.com, and it's Linda with a Y. So lindaallenwrites.com. And you can find me on Instagram under Lynda Allen Writes and Lynda Allen Author on Facebook.
Perfect, wonderful,
Very nice.
and
We've
last but
had such
certainly not
fun. Thank
least.
you.
Oh, well, thank you for being here. We want to make sure though
Yeah.
that we go through our ritual of learning
Yes.
about what are you reading, listening to, watching, consuming, being entertained by these days. What can we add to our list to entertain ourselves?
Reading, currently right now, I'm reading Death at the Door by Olivia Black. Again, another paranormal kind of cozy.
Hmm.
Olivia cracks me up. I just finished reading Poison and Prejudice by Daphne Silver, another cozy mystery. I read a lot of
She's
cozies.
a sweetheart. She
Oh,
is.
she really
She's the
is.
greatest.
Yes, she's so kind. And I recently read, oh, Mindy Quigley's new book,
At death's door.
Death's Doe.
Yes.
Yes, from the Deep Dish Mysteries. Oh, I love her books. Her sense of humor is great too. In terms of TV shows, I just started watching Bookish on PBS, which I'm
Oh, yeah.
enjoying.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's been fun. And I love Brokenwood. I have this strange obsession with
Mm.
Brokenwood, set in New Zealand, which I find to
Hmm.
be a lot of fun. So, yeah. And I did enjoy Seven Dials, the Agatha
Okay.
Christie
Yes. Yep.
adaptation on Netflix. That was really good too. So I do, as you can tell, read and watch a lot of mysteries.
That's
Phyllis, Phyllis,
that's
Phyllis A. Whitney was my favorite when I was a teenager, and I got to meet her once, and I went totally
Oh,
fangirl.
wow.
It was so much fun.
That
That's
is
cool.
that it's so nice. It's like amazing meeting the authors that have like inspired you and
Yeah, it really is.
all of that great stuff. Um, JC, any new things to add for us this week?
I've been busy reading my reviews on Goodreads. No, no, I haven't been doing that. Um,
And
you
they're
know,
all
I
fabulous.
that's it's like I kind of take a quick peek and then go away. No, actually, I also just finished Seven Dials. Thought it
Ah,
was a lot of fun. I thought my wife asked me about the ending. She said, the way that ended, would Agatha Christie have actually written it that way? And I said, I haven't actually read the book, so I don't know.
Oh, you got
Probably not, though. So,
yeah.
folks, if you're wondering to know, want to know what I'm talking about, you got to watch it because the ending has an interesting, fun little twist there
Yes,
that
it
was
does.
totally unexpected. Um, and I'm also, speaking of Dame Agatha, I am still reading Partners in Crime, the collection of short stories of Tommy and Tuppence Beresford. And of course, that's a
Oh,
lot of
yeah.
fun too. So, yeah. Sarah, what do you got?
Well, I was lucky enough to read Buried in the Sand long, long ago.
You
So
were okay.
I am but very, very happy that it is now out in the world for everybody else to consume.
Thank you.
I'm trying to think since our last show on Thursday. We last night, so I had a migraine yesterday, and it's really hard to
Mm.
just like have light when but I wanted to watch something last night that would kind of like lull me into a peaceful slumber. And we ended up putting on Our Oceans, which was a Netflix documentary that was narrated by Barack Obama. And if you ever
Oh,
need a
wow.
voice that is going to like calm you and put you to sleep, I was like,
I'm with you.
that's the man to listen to. It was we watched the first episode, which is about the Pacific Ocean, and it's like I love watching nature shows because it reminds me how incredible our world is and how much it has survived and endured, despite what humanity continues to do to it. And it's just like animals are incredible and amazing, and it's a very, very well done docu series. So I'm excited to watch about the Indian Ocean tonight.
Oh, cool.
So definitely, if you're into oceans at all, or for me, I was into whales, so I loved
Oh,
watching the
yeah.
whales and the sharks and the dolphins as part of it. It was very, very, very well done. We're also still going through the Chelsea Detective. With each episode, it's like an hour and a half long, so they're just like mini movies.
Mhm.
And so I think we have maybe two more in the season to watch. So I'm just waiting for Astrid to be out of his life.
Do you ever slow down at the end when you're watching something when you know you're getting towards the end of the season or the
Yes,
series or
well,
whatever because you don't want to
I
end
did that.
it?
I did that with Seven Dials because it's only three episodes. So I was like,
It's
"Oh,
only
I
three.
want this to like last a bit longer. So I've only watched the first episode because it's like I don't want the others to go by too quickly. But
Yeah.
I do that all the time, and then I never get to the end because it's just like I
Yeah.
forget or I get sidelined. That's every show that I've watched. It's like, whoops, I forgot to finish it. So
It's like
My
with
wife and I have
series
still
on
not
Netflix.
watched. Yeah, my wife and I still have one more episode of Dairy Girls to watch, and we just
Oh,
refuse because it's like, no, that'll mean it's over.
yeah.
Speaking of profanity.
Yes, but that one has a great ending to it. So hopefully you'll get around to it.
Yeah.
Lynda, again, thank you so much for being here. For our
Thank you.
wonderful audience members who joined us live during the show, we very much appreciate you and your comments. For those joining us after the fact, we are happy that you stopped by, and we really thank you for your views and support. JC and I are trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. We would love it if you guys could subscribe to our channel. It really, really helps us out
Please,
getting
please,
more
please,
visibility.
please, please.
Yes, we don't like to beg, but
Do it,
please,
do it.
if you
Yeah.
haven't subscribed and you watch us, we'd really, really appreciate it. We are back with another new episode on Thursday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern. We are joined by Susan Van Kirk. We're going to be talking about her Endurance Mysteries, her Art Center series, and we're going to be catching up with her on all that she has going on. So we hope that you, until then, stay warm. And, the world is what it is right now. You have the ability to call your senators and your representatives to make your opinions heard. We encourage you to do so. We don't take a lot of time to be political on this show, but there's a difference between politics and life. So just be a good civic citizen,
Yes.
and
Thank you for saying
take
that.
care of America for us.
Yeah.
We all need to come together for it. So with that said, Lynda, thank you for being here. Our viewers, thank you for tuning in to us. And until next time, folks, stay warm and stay bookish. Bye, everybody.
Thank you
Have a good
both.
one.
Bye. Thank you so much.